Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are O-Lan Jones and author Hart Getzen. Actor, composer, director, O-Lan Jones was born actually in Los Angeles, but was raised by a free-spirited mother in the ghettos across the United States, London, and the jungles of the Yucatan. She started acting at the age of 16 at off-Broadway theaters, married playwright Sam Shepard when she was a mere 19, raised a son while originating roles as the woman in Beth Henley's, Murray Mednick's, John Stepling's, and a bunch of other authors, writers. And she's quite the cultural icon. We're happy to have her with her because aside from that part of her life that we were talking about, she has written original musicals, right? Yeah. 3 operas. She's written scores for things. The opera that I saw was The Woman in the Wall. So how did this musical background come? Well, you were in the jungles of the Yucatan.
A little creature hopped by.
With a harp.
I guess my musical background just came from listening. And I've got one of those math brains where I can tell the principle of what's going on. And so, yeah, my background is wild as the jungle, and I don't have any official. I've depended on the kindness of my musical directors if I have not put the right markings, but I know how to read music and write music.
You can read music. Did you take music lessons?
No, it was in my family. My grandmother was something of a prodigy. She could hear a tune and then pick it out on the piano when she was 2. So there was always a piano around, and it seemed obvious to me, the principles for how music is written and how you read it. So I think it was just sort of hardwired in.
When you were acting, did you do musicals?
I started out as a singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when I was in the jungles, that's when I was...
Are we really talking about the jungles? Is this
we're
really
talking
true?
We're talking about living in a small town of 80 Mayan Indians.
Oh, wow.
Spanish was their second language, too.
Oh.
I was in...
Did you learn
in a
that
hut.
language?
No, I didn't. We were sort of insular, but we did live in a hut, and there was a cook hut in the back, which meant a small hut with a slab that was sort of hollowed out, and you built a fire and scorpions.
You did?
Yeah.
Was there a drum in there too?
the sound.
I keep seeing you like hitting a drum, because you did use that beat in the opera that I saw.
Well, that was more medieval modes.
Yes, but there was that kind of beat to it.
There's always a drum. I cannot write something without a drum.
You have written 3 other operas.
Yeah.
And what were they? Just give those to us quickly.
One was called The Woman Who Forgot Her Sweater. We did that at the at the fort, inside the fort, and that was lots of jungle, real jungle stuff.
I like that.
It had the civilized music, and then it had what lurks underneath. And then we also did one called Heracles and the Hydra, which was an evening of 4 different operas.
And you wrote the music, or you wrote the words?
I've written the music to the librettist. I write the story with the librettist.
And then?
And then once we've got the story, she writes the words, or whoever I'm working with writes the words, and then I write the music.
And the third one?
Well, this big one was the...
Oh, this was the one we're talking about, which is medieval, right?
Right, and that's a full-length one, and it's written for that big choir. Let's
talk about that, because you had a sound designer, original music, songs for the theater. What's a sound design?
Sound design is sometimes it's just like effects, but it's also like transitions, or sometimes a lot of it is composing little songs. Like when I worked with the LA Women's Shakespeare Company, it was to have little songs they could dance to, or songs they could sing.
In between?
Or during, like if Shakespeare's songs put to music, and however I put it to music, and orchestrated however I did.
You also wrote some other musicals where they weren't operas.
They weren't operas. They were, but you know, there's that ghastly moment where people break into song.
Yeah, oh yeah, I love that. Those are like movies, right? And then they start singing.
Here it comes, yeah. So I've just done so much experimentation with different kinds of music and words, and I really love the poetry that's available and that you can use freely in operas.
Well, you did do that. So how did Woman in the Wall originate?
Well, I was driving down the road.
Yes.
And I heard on the radio somebody talking about this practice that they really had in the medieval times, which nuns would sign up for the honor of being immured, which means walled into a room their entire lives.
Oh, that's interesting.
And they would have one window on the church and one window on the outside world. And it just gave me the chills, because I thought, is this not a metaphor for our own lives? Here we are.
I know, but that's so great, because you did this in a room where there was no sets, and the way you did it, you brought that window and opened it, and she looked out. It was really, it was very effective.
Well, I'm glad, because when I was doing it, the thing that became clear to me is, first, you know how you go on intuition, and then after the fact you can describe, oh, that's why the intuition was right.
Right.
But the intuition was to make all of the externals pretend, very, very pretend, like the pretend walls and the pretend window and the pretend flats. You know, we could have brought out a basket of apples, but to have the flat forced perspective.
That was so great, just painted and put there, and a basket painted and put there.
Yeah, and I realized afterwards that it was to do with underlining the fact that everything interior to this woman was real, and everything interior to all of the people, that was the true part. And the exterior, it was all for pretend and could show up in any kind of form.
But that was pretty subtle.
Yeah.
You know, to get to think about her insides and then think about what was going on outside. You got this idea while you were listening to the radio. How did Kathleen Kramer come into it?
She and I have written a lot of, we've written some musicals together, and we've written that The Woman Who Forgot Her Sweater together. And, and I love her writing, and I thought, I called her up, I said, doesn't this sound like an idea that we are interested in?
Yeah.
Because you can tell, you know, when there's a potent seed to something, that it can turn into something. And so I didn't hear from her for a couple of months, and I called her back to say, well, what did you think? And she had already gone to the library. It had stacks of books on it.
How great.
And she studied, you know, Thomas Aquinas's Virtues, because you know how the virtues show up.
Because that's how it looked. The virtues were great.
Yeah.
Did you write together? Do you write together?
We wrote the story together, and the form and the structure, and we talk about the content of it. But then it's better when she gets a flight of fancy. She just gets to.
Then she goes. What about the music? Then you write the music after or before?
A couple of times I wrote it before, just to some themes, but I like writing from the words.
So you want the story.
I like to have the words and the rhythms of the words.
Well, you had this huge choral group.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty big.
Yeah, there were like 26.
Yeah, it was pretty big, and you had an orchestra.
Yeah.
Because we're in this Masonic temple, right? And it's just like one big room, and it was fantastic the way it was done. It was so original. But, and the conductor, David O.
Yeah, he's
just
fantastic.
Working away.
Yeah.
Have you worked with him before?
Yeah, we've worked quite a bit. We did together another Overtone Industries production called Songs and Dances of Imaginary Lands, and that took 7 years to put together. That had 21.
So you know him a long time.
Yeah, and he's a good composer too. So he composed some things, and he's done a lot of musical directing.
Because he worked the whole time. I know you directed the play, but he worked the whole time.
During it, yeah.
And the chorus was up and down.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to write?
Well, it took...
Or to get it actually into production, let's
say
that.
Well, I wrote... No, it's interesting, because I wrote the first half of it it took like 6 years, not every day, but you know, it took 6 years. And then the second half took 6 months.
Oh, so it really came fast.
Yeah, once I, well, you know, there's that secret called consistency, which I've just discovered.
You just started following this.
Where you do it every day.
But what about how'd you cast it? How'd you find those people? Did you write it for, what was her name?
Gretchen Johnson. Yeah,
Gretchen
she's
Johnson,
been in
The Soprano.
Yeah, she's a mezzo.
The woman.
Actually.
She's a mezzo. Yes,
but she actually had a range in that from because I knew she could, even though it aggravated her in some areas. But she has this huge range from like a tenor up to a soprano. But she feels that she is a mezzo. So.
But anyway, did you write it for her, or how'd you?
Yeah, definitely with her voice in mind, because she's also got extraordinary acting ability. You don't usually. I haven't seen opera singers who are like athletes with such flexibility, such fluidity, and such depth of acting. So yes, she was always in my mind. Also, she understands. It's like an epic version of an inner journey. It's a funny little.
I think this is funny talking about your inner journey because I know you worked in Edward Scissorhands, and I thought that was an inward journey too on your part. Tell us what you did on that.
Well, first of all, I had a lot of fun just acting. But then an interesting musical anecdote is that there was a huge organ in the room where it was supposed to be my house. And Tim.
So you played. Who did you play this?
Esmeralda.
Oh, Esmeralda.
I was sort of like the witch figure in the neighborhood. And Tim Burton said, "Do you know how to play the organ?" Because here it is. It's like you bring a gun on stage. You have to. And so I said, "Well, to a certain extent." And then he gave me this hymn to play while I was acting. And I'm not, even though I can write music for real musicians to play, I'm not a keyboard player. And so,
but a keyboard and an organ is totally different.
Well, yeah,
like moving your feet.
It had the pedal.
Pushing and pulling. Did you like that?
Well, yeah, but I couldn't play what they'd given me, so I had to write something that I could play and also act at the same time. Because I maybe could have made it, but there would have been no room for acting, and I was there for being actor. So.
I see. So you wrote your own music.
Yes, I did.
And he liked it.
Yeah, he kept it in.
That's fantastic.
It is, yeah.
Just before we leave, tell us a little bit about Vibrant Productions Management and then the Overtone Industries. Do they work together?
Well, we do now, yes. Overtone Industries is the company I started many moons ago, and I got serious with about 10 years ago when I realized I'm in this for the duration, and I need to have a support system for what I'm creating. And Vibrant came on when we did the Songs and Dances of Imaginary Lands.
Oh, they started with you a long time ago.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. And they had the idea to make this community arts workshop each weekend, which was fantastic.
That's great.
People would show up and they were crocheting stuff out of plastic.
And did you work with them too?
I did. Mostly it was Snezhna Petrovic who was the production designer for that piece. But yeah, a lot of textures for different things were in the production. And
in your production of Woman in the Wall?
No, in the Songs and Dances of Imaginary Land.
But they did produce?
They produced that, and then they produced Woman in the Wall, and it's a fantastic partnership. They just are so excellent in every area.
And how do you find those site-specific places? Because who knew that there was a big room like that, or that the Masonic Temple would rent it out?
Yeah. Well, I went there to see some other music, some folk music, and then it just had such a ceremonial atmosphere, and it's hard to go back into a theater once you've been in an environment.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, that's fantastic.
I did a concert reading in a theater of the Woman in the Wall, and it just felt constricted and
that's really good. Yeah. Well, then we should all try to go to those kind of places, or find them, I think. Just look for them, and they're there. O-Lan, I love it. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
And don't go away. We'll be right back with author Hart Getzen. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Our guest, author Hart Getzen, is a Southern gentleman, born in Texas, raised in North Carolina and Virginia, earned a Bachelor of Arts in Art History at Vassar, and studied in London at the International Film School. He's produced and directed film and video games, and he's had a career as a painter. Hart, you used the word immerse, immerse, immerse. As I was reading everything that you had written and your bio, that word kept jumping out, and there were so many things. For example, color field painting. You immersed, or Barnett Newman immersed himself. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that is actually the whole aesthetic theme to my whole crazy career.
Immerse?
Immersion and immersive entertainment. And it all started with one of Barnett Newman's paintings, Who's Afraid of Red, Yellow, and Blue. One of that series I saw many years ago at the Met, and it had a profound effect on me. Shortly thereafter, I started painting series of paintings, color field paintings, and then moved eventually into motion pictures and into all of the very immersive, sort of all the way up to IMAX 3D, large formats.
You studied art history with Linda Nochlin?
Yes.
Who is fantastic.
Yep.
Was that an influence on color field? Did she influence that?
Honestly, I think she influenced me more as a writer, because when I was very young, growing up in North Carolina, I was very interested in art history. And for some reason, I found one or two of her books, and it was just incredibly enlightening, and it really struck a chord in me. So I actually was hoping to find her as a teacher at Vassar College, and I did, and that was a big reason why I went there.
I never thought Vassar was coeducational. Of course, it changed for a long time.
Yeah.
You get behind in what's going on. So were you one of the first after it changed?
It changed about 10 years before I went.
Oh, it had. So it was. You
fully,
were immersed.
It was
already immersed.
it was pretty much 50-50 co-ed by the time I got there.
So did Newman do the paintings in the chapel in Houston?
Yeah, well, he did the 14 Stations of the Cross.
Yes.
And I also had an opportunity to see those at the National Gallery, and I'm not sure where they are now, but I wrote my thesis on that series.
So immersion in simulation entertainment, that's part of what we're talking. What does that mean?
That was sort of a continuation of putting an audience in front of, from a color field and modulating colors into a motion picture image by wrapping the audience around with a screen and putting them on a motion platform and tying it all together into one kind of overwhelming, connected experience.
Maybe we should talk a little bit about color field, what that means, because a lot of people don't understand color field. It took me a long time to understand it. It looks like you just slap something on a canvas, but it's really not like that.
For me, it's a very sophisticated kind of communication. And especially with Rothko and Newman, they were somehow able to juxtapose different colors and convey emotion and an expression.
Does it mean just one color on the canvas, or can it be any, or many colors? I always thought color field was one color on a canvas.
I think primarily it's known as one color, or sort of a range of colors.
Like building up.
Right.
Like I know that all the artists that I know are color field painters have 50 different colors underneath this one gray wall.
Right. Right.
So that's what I was wondering.
So I think you have the static images that are very immersive, and then you have when you get into a serial format, the way Barnett Newman and others have worked, you introduce the element of time.
I see. The serial. When I was talking about that, I was talking about the Rothko Chapel in Houston.
Okay, sure.
And that has just what you're talking about too.
Exactly.
And when you sit in the middle of that, you are immersed.
Exactly.
So you have this all around you. I after you talk about wrapping the audience and the entertainment, your writing is immersive. I'm just using this word because every time I got to what we were going to talk about, it had immerse in front of it. Novels, websites, games, you use that in how would you say you use that in a website?
It's a very different kind of experience, what people refer to as transmedia. And what we start with this project is a series of books and a narrative. And within that narrative, in another version of the book, there will be code inserted and all kinds of other information.
That's immersive writing? Is that, or the website? Is that
well,
what
where it becomes immersive in a sort of play on that idea is when you have books, websites, and then a reality game, and they all work together.
They all work together.
Correct.
I see. I thought they were all separate. Well, that takes us then to the ultimate game, which is the novel that you wrote.
Correct.
Which we have here. And Echo's Revenge. Where is it set?
It's set in a little town in the state of Washington, and starts off, it's a story about two brothers. And they start off in a very dysfunctional family environment. And their refuge is in the world of video games and playing these games and mastering these games and having a very extended social life in these games. So it lets them kind of leap out of their world and become bigger players in the world outside.
Okay, so what audience did you write this for?
I originally wrote this for sort of guys 12 to 15.
Okay.
Very specifically for gamers.
Okay. What's a gamer?
Just someone who plays video games on a regular basis, who has a regular social circles that they play with.
Because you talk about gamer. What? Yeah. And then who is Echo?
Echo is this creature in the game that they destroy, basically. I mean,
while they're playing,
yeah, it's either he's going to get them or they're going to get him, and they become masters in this game, and they're able to beat him.
These two boys. Okay, what is a reality game?
A reality game is the idea of having a game play in the real world using augmented information from computers, books, television, whatever you have to convey information.
But isn't that kind of scary, having this like a game, computer game going on in real life? Is that how it happens?
Most alternate reality games or augmented reality games are more socially oriented. So what I've done is taken that concept and blended it in the book with a horror story, basically.
Yeah, it kind of was like scary, but you didn't write it under Hart Getzen. You wrote it under Sean
Austin.
Austin.
Correct.
Where'd you get that name? That reminded me of like video games or people on email who don't want to say their true identity and that kind of thing.
It's a game tag. It's basically a tag. Right. And I chose that name because I wanted a video game writer to be reporting this investigation and conducting this investigation. So that's how I came up with that.
Yeah, I wondered about that. And the other thing, so we've talked about all the things that I went through, and it was kind of hard thinking, can you learn about a computer from reading the book?
You can learn, basically what you can learn from this book is kind of what happens when people are brought out from the virtual world into the real world and how they interact. And the second book is all about how the game was made and how it went wrong. And it's all about the designers. It's kind of pulling the curtain back and letting you see what the process is like.
And the third, there's a third book?
The third book is, follows this, and it's more in the line of the thriller action of this book.
When, I'm back to the contents of this book, because talk about hacker and claw and 7. I mean, you have to keep all these things straight, right?
there are a variety of characters because we have the gamers on one hand, we have the...
Are the gamers the boys?
The gamers are the boys and their whole world, and then you have the designers on the other side of that world. And within the designer's side, you have all kinds of personalities, which you learn about in the second book. And one is this guy, Hacker, who has decided to play his own games within the game.
I got it. Okay.
And so he sabotages these poor guys once in a while and kind of confuses them.
I see. And the last one is, what's a zombie processor?
Zombie processors are computers like possibly your own PC, which you're not, if you're not aware, if you don't have the right kind of firewall or whatever protection, that people use your computer to do other things, just for processing
That's
time.
why I wondered if you could learn a lot about computers from just reading this book.
Absolutely.
You actually think about STEM, STEM, which I think is fantastic, science, technology, engineering and math. How did that come into this? Because I think that's what we want all of our youth to concentrate on, and they're not getting enough of it.
It came in after I wrote the book. I realized one of the sort of devices I used was making everything very realistic and based on real science. And when I got done with the book, I realized, wait, there's a great opportunity here to have all kinds of links to real STEM opportunities and educational opportunities. And so that part of it took off on the website. I have a lot of that on the website.
And are people thinking about it and trying to use it in school?
A lot of, there's a lot of excitement about the book because of that, yes. And it's already been put on summer reading lists. And a lot of sort of science programs are starting to pick up on it and do it. And,
yeah, because I think that science part of it is really important. And I know I go to the UN and go to meetings at the UN all the time. And many of those NGO groups are trying to promote this STEM, this STEM thing. So it's great that it's a part of this.
It's a very big part of it. And in fact, all of the most frightening elements of the book are composed of real technology. And
well, the next book, since you're such a great artist, or you're an artist, I want to see some paintings in the book done by you.
We're doing something like that in the website.
Good.
Yes.
That's what I like. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
And keep writing to us at 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. But JAQUINN1 at AOL.com. See you next time.